Okay, in this second tutorial, I'm just going to talk you through how you can prepare for this particular part of the revision. And I'll also give you some guidance on the other three main parts. Okay, so let's just have a little look. In the last tutorial, I gave you some advice on how to prepare overall, but also how to revise and explain graphs. And I would suggest that you make sure at this point that you can be given a graph, any type of graph, and that you know exactly how to describe the pattern of change shown in that graph. Okay. In this particular question, this is a little bit different. This is wanting you to describe the pattern of change across the globe. So that's going to inevitably be using a map. So the first thing you might want to do, you can either maybe just copy this across. This is something that you're being asked to revise. And in the last tutorial, I encouraged you to have made up your own little revision notes, and I provided you with a template for that. So if you have been doing that, you could maybe paste this kind of revision point. Can you do that? So you might think, first of all, look in your class notes across the whole of the climate change topic and see where did we describe patterns on a map, and what am I meant to do when describing a pattern? What you might also then decide to do is I want to look at some questions that look like that. So if you want to find some questions, go to the geography revision site, which is you'll find at the top of the Google Classroom. It's just taking a bit of time to load up. And when you're in that revision site, open up a past paper, okay? Which if you will find if you scroll down to the bottom. So down at the bottom, we have a whole bunch of past papers, and open one of them up. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to open up the 2014 exam, and there we are, and it will load up. And if you remember, the climate change questions appear towards the end of the exam paper in section 3. So if we just scroll towards the end of the paper, and there we are, tourism's question 13. We wanted to find question 12. That's environmental hazards questions 11, 10, and we get to question 9. There we have a typical map-based question. So how do you go about answering one of these? So first thing I would maybe do, it's up to you. You can just practice it, or you might want to maybe snip like this and take a wee screenshot of the question and pop it into your revision resource. Okay. And then just hit the copy button there, and I'm just now going to paste this into the template that I've been putting together. Okay, not that. Beg your pardon. Here we go. So I'm now going to paste it in there. So I'm going to use the CTRL button and V, and that should paste that. So there's the exam question. Now, the question says, describe in detail locations which are greater at risk from climate change. Now, when you describe a pattern on a map, you must not talk about entire continents when you identify something. You must be quite specific to areas. Now, this map is showing 3 things to do with climate change: flooding, crop yields, and water stress issues. So these are all problems created by climate change. And there's a color for each one in the key, and that matches somewhere on the map. So if I was describing the pattern in detail, I might say that flooding risk is going to be heavily concentrated in, now this area of the world, by the way, would be what we call Southeast Asia. Okay. We can also see flooding, high levels of flooding risk found in, we can see over here, you would say India. You would never say the top of the map, the bottom, the center. You've got to name areas from your globe, maybe countries if you know the name of certain countries, or if you can remember continents, areas of continents. So for example, if we look at water stress and drought risk, we can see this area here. Now, where is that? You might not exactly know where that is, but you do know that this is Asia. So if you said Central Asia, that would be accurately describing that area. Likewise, we can see crop yield reduction in this area here. So you would say in Central or Central Northern Africa, or you might actually know the name of this area. It's called the Sub-Saharan Africa. Now, in detail is required by being quite specific with your descriptions. So if you're going to say South America is going to have water stress, don't say that. Say the northern coast of South America. That would be more specific. So that's the detail. And the other thing is make sure you do it 4 times because there are 4 marks available for describing this pattern. Okay? It is interesting, though, if you were to say that all 3 that are likely to happen, if you notice an overall pattern, so for example, in the central regions around the equator, seems to be the areas that are going to suffer all 3 problems in high concentrations, whereas northern regions of the planet, like up here where I'm indicating, are not at all. So you can make much broader statements where you identify whole regions of the world which might have a problem or might have something going on, or the opposite, don't have anything happening. So it's fine to also say that. So what you would then do is maybe practice an answer making your 4 descriptions. Right, that's the kind of the first key skill, and you will always get an exam question as either a graph or a map. So you're going to see a question, at least one, that has these 2 features, okay? The other questions from climate change will be linked to these 3 things. And these are always going to have the word explain in it. So explain requires you to give reasons for something. So explain the physical and human causes. So what I suggest you do for this one, if you're wanting to revise it, you might create a new bullet point, because this is a new idea that you're revising. And the idea that we're going to revise is explaining the physical causes. Okay, and you now want to take some notes, some revision notes. So once again, you can look back to your main master note set for climate change and go back through what the physical causes were. And what you're going to want to do is identify them. So for example, volcanic eruptions. Okay, now you might want to describe what they do. Well, sulfur and gases emitted into atmosphere. Now, if you read the notes, you might find that what that does is it increases the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So you might write that down. But you might also then say that this leads to actually to heat from the sun being reflected. It can't get through this thickened atmosphere, and therefore it could cause the planet to cool down. The actual gases that are emitted are actually called sulfites. Okay, so it would cause global cooling, a very large volcanic eruption. Okay, now I haven't just describing it would say volcanic eruptions emit gases. That's a description that tells me what volcanoes do, but that doesn't explain how it would cause climate change. So you would need to make sure you could explain. Okay, now these questions are always worth 6 marks. I'm just going to show you what they tend to look like. There we are. This one is explain in detail the physical and human causes of global climate change. So you're always dealing with 6 marks for these explain questions. It could be the causes, or it could be the consequences, or another word for the consequences is the effect of climate change. So for example, sea levels rising leads to areas of coastal Bangladesh being flooded, which destroys people's crops and causes them to have to leave the area because they've lost their homes. That would be an explanation. Now, what's good about that is you'll notice I've mentioned a place. Sorry, we're dealing here with consequences. I've named a place and I've explained fully how people are affected by, in this case, rising sea levels. So referring to examples. And the last one is solutions. So that is what can we do? Now there's 3 kind of approaches you can think about that. You can deal with making some points about what you as an individual could do and explain how that would help tackle climate change. You could talk about what governments can do, or local authorities, councils. Or you could talk about international agreements and what they can do and how they're hoping to tackle climate change. Okay? But the key thing is you need to remember 6 of them. Now, just to finish off, if you are wanting a reviser refresher for any of this, what I suggest you do is go to the Google revision website, scroll down, sorry, not scroll down, go to the global issues section. Well, it's just loading up. And you will find in every topic area of geography, whether it's this one that you're revising for climate change, or any of the ones that we're going to be studying in the future, that towards the bottom, I've already indicated this in my first tutorial, you have a video. You see 3 videos here, which will, if you click on them, I'm just going to open this up, has a kind of a quick summary recap teaching of that particular theme. Okay, so these are really useful ways for kind of revising and relearning and helping you remember the main themes that you're likely to come across in the exam. Okay, so watch those videos if you choose to do so. Use your class notes if you choose to do so. You can certainly go on to the school internet and maybe research some websites. The BBC Bitesize is quite a useful one. So here's the video that you could watch. Always, though, remember the starting point, just to finish off with today, always use the revision checklist and make sure you can tick these off and not just say, yes, I know a cause or I know a consequence, but you can do 6 for all these 3 and that you can explain them, that you're able to describe patterns using maps, and that you can describe patterns using graphs. Okay, and if you can do all of that and you're confident with that, you should be successful in this end of topic assessment.